Hello everyone, I'm real estate economist Matthew Gardner, and welcome to Mind the Housing Market. People. Economies can't expand without people. Most businesses can't grow without people. And housing, both demand for it and prices of it, depend solely on people and where they choose to live. Over the past few years, the US population hasn't just been growing, it's been moving. And where people are going to and leaving from tells us a lot about the future of housing, jobs, and the economy. So today we're breaking down the latest Census Bureau data that gives us as close to a real-time look at how and where this country is growing, and more importantly, why it matters. America's population is still expanding, but not the way that it used to. After a post-pandemic rebound, population growth slowed in 2025, and slowed a lot. That said, between 2020 and 2025, the country did add more than 10 million people. And with roughly 1.8 million people added in the past year, the total population of the country now closing in on 342 million. However, the pace of growth dropped to about 0.5% last year. Now that is the slowest expansion since the pandemic. Looking at total changes in population, the South has been dominating, adding the largest share of new residents over the past year and the past 5 years. Meanwhile, the West has been growing, albeit slowly, and the Northeast and the Midwest, they've barely been keeping pace. And within the regions, growth isn't evenly distributed. Some states are booming, but others are struggling to maintain population levels. So what's driving that imbalance? Well, to understand what's really going on, you have to look at the three components of population change. First, there's natural population change. Simple calculation, births minus deaths. And there's domestic migration. Now, although this number isn't additive, movers don't add to the US population, it is crucial to understand where people are moving from, where they're moving to. And finally, international migration, obviously measuring persons moving into the United States from another country. And what the data is telling me is that migration is doing almost all the heavy lifting. If you want to understand what's happening in America, follow the movers. And it's domestic migration that has reshaped the map. The South continues to attract the largest share of new residents, driven by relatively affordable housing, job growth, and quality of life. The Midwest has seen a few people moving in from other parts of the country. Now, I find that interesting because it is the region with the greatest share of relatively affordable housing. Meanwhile, more people have been moving out of the West and the Northeast than moving in. But regions don't tell the whole story. In aggregate, 30 states saw their population increase from people moving from other states. The greatest growth obviously was in the large markets Texas, Arizona, Carolinas, and Tennessee. However, parts of the Sun Belt, Midwest, and most of the Northeast are still struggling to retain residents. And this was specifically true in California and also in New York. But significant losses, we also saw them in Illinois, New Jersey, and in Massachusetts. And these shifts directly impact housing demand. Why? Well, it's a mix of lower cost of living, job growth, housing availability, and yes, quality of life. And once these trends start, they tend to reinforce themselves. Economic momentum follows population growth. Now, I find it fascinating that immigration is not something that's talked about nearly enough, as it is a major driver of population growth, and has been for some years. That said, the number of persons moving to the US from another country, yes, it's been particularly volatile and no more so than seen in the latest data release. After surging post-pandemic, immigration dropped sharply last year. And it's this contraction that was primarily responsible for the massive slowdown in the national population growth numbers. Given current federal policies regarding immigration, I don't think it's a reach to suggest that we will see immigration levels pulling back even further when we get the 2026 data release. And that's important because the 2025 data that we're looking at today is for the 12 months leading up to July 1 of 2025, so it doesn't actually include any data for the second half of last year. Although every state benefited from immigration, the ones that benefited the most: Washington State, Texas, Florida, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Washington, D.C. And for some states, immigration isn't just helpful, it's essential. States that are losing residents to other states rely on international migration just to maintain population levels. And when that flow weakens, population growth can stall out or even reverse. Across the country, there are 19 states that would have seen their population levels fall in 2025 were it not for international migration. Which leads us to the final part of the equation: natural growth, births minus deaths. I'm afraid to say that it's been slowing for years. Birth rates are down, way down. From an average of almost 25 babies born for every 1,000 persons, the number's almost halved over the past 75 years. Now, we did see some modest improvement in the late 70s through the 1980s, but the numbers are disconcerting. And this highlights a bigger issue. The US population is aging, birth rates are falling, and therefore, without international migration, long-term growth becomes harder to sustain. In 2025, 17 states saw the number of deaths exceeding the number of babies being born. And with the modest increase in the birth rate that we saw in 2025 unlikely to continue, and a death rate that's unlikely to fall, I just don't see natural growth adding tangibly to the country's population as we move forward. Without natural population growth, there's even more pressure on international migration to sustain workforce growth and obviously economic expansion, which leads me to believe that a significant percentage of demand for housing going forward is going to come from immigrants. Population growth drives housing demand, labour supply, consumer spending, really the entire economic ecosystem. Fast-growing states typically see stronger housing demand, business expansion and new business formations, infrastructure investment, while slower growth states often face the opposite: softening housing demand, fiscal challenges from aging demographics, and slower economic growth. And here's the really important part. These trends are reinforcing themselves. Simply put, where people move today shapes tomorrow's housing markets. I hope that I've shown you that America is still growing, but more slowly and unevenly. Migration has become the dominant force shaping where growth is happening and by how much, while impacts from natural population increases, well, they continue to fade. And those demographic shifts will ripple across housing, the economy, and local communities for years to come. So remember, if you want to understand where the country is headed, watch where people are going. And that's what I think. Thanks for watching this episode of Mind the Housing Market. If you found my comments useful, you can subscribe to my videos, and you can do that by using the link below. Until next time, take care. I'll see you again soon on another episode of Mind the Housing Market, where I'll take on another topic that's of interest to real estate professionals and their clients. Bye now.